Welcome to the Dr. Elisa Show here on KUHS Denver, the stream. Thank you for joining me. If you're a regular listener, you know that the show is about igniting something in you, a new spirit, a new idea, a new notion, inspiring you in some way. And I have to say, we all need a little inspiration, right? It's been a rough go, but we're coming out of it. So thank you for joining me. Let me just tell you a little bit about me again. As you know, that PhD is in sight. Yes, I put myself through school as a professional astrologer. And so you get the metaphysics and the physics. Oh yeah, I've got a degree in hard science also. It's an interesting mixture. The show, if you're joining for the first time, are conversations with people that I find inspiring. And I have to thank you for joining me. I realized this morning that because of you, the listeners, I have developed my third career, my encore, and I'm learning how to do this well. All of your feedback, all of your comments have been so profoundly helpful in helping me become a better conversationalist, a better radio host, and helping me help you. So thank you. Quick shout out, I sponsor my own show, so you can find me at elisarobin.com. That's my website. You can just also email me at elisarobin@msn.com. I am on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. It's always Elisa Robin, and I'm easy to find. So feel free to connect with me. And yes, I do astrology readings, I do sessions to help you with whatever you're struggling with, and I help people build life on the loose. That's kind of my little trademark there. So I have to say that this show is getting a little edgier as we go, which I think is absolutely marvelous, and I want to thank you for in that journey with me. If you're listening, you can't see how I'm dressed, and if you're watching, you can only see me from the waist up, but trust me, my outfits are just getting a little edgier, the same way my hair is getting a little wilder with time. So, enough about me. What I want to do is tell you about this amazing guest I have on today. As you know, I bring guests on who have inspired me in some way. So this is an interesting story. I was doing some research for a show about, and several shows that I've done, on how women have been impacted in 2020. The way women, especially, men also, but women are starting more side hustles. How some women, after helping their kids get through school, find themselves financially disadvantaged. And I read a few articles and I realized they were all by the same amazing writer, who not only was articulate and obviously well researched, but was engaging in her writing. So of course I had to go to her webpage. And then I saw everything else she'd written. And she's absolutely amazing. And she's a freelancer. And I wanted to interview a freelancer because I think every writer wants to be a freelancer. And I wanted to get what is it really like? So, Charlotte, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Can you start by telling people how to find you?
Yes. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for having me on. It's really such a pleasure. I'm a big fan of your work as well.
Thank you.
And readers can find me on nymag.com, which is the website for New York Magazine, where I've been a columnist for many years now, and was previously an editor when I had a staff job. And then I'm also a contributor to the New York Times. I have a weekly newsletter for the Sunday business section, and I also contribute to other sections as well. So you can find me at both of those outlets. Also a not very active member of Twitter, but I am on there. And you can also find my website at charlottecowles.com.
Great. So, and what I love about your website, and everybody listening, the links to some of her articles are really, really fun. They're just, I mean, the links are there, the articles are fun. So, thank you, Charlotte. Here's where I want to start. Can you tell me about the journey to being a successful freelancer? Can you just talk about that a bit?
Absolutely, and it started really many years before I became a freelancer, in that to be able to become a freelancer, I had several full-time jobs, making connections and contacts within the industry, and also building a reputation so that people knew who I was. And I think nobody can, or at least I've yet to meet someone, I shouldn't say nobody, who can just start a freelance career from scratch. And especially in journalism, I think it's really difficult to get published. And it took me, really I graduated from college in 2007, right into that recession. And actually managed to get a job pretty soon after college at a newspaper, and could not believe my luck. I was just so happy there, but then it promptly folded, and I was kind of back to square one, but ultimately wound up getting a job at New York Magazine as an assistant editor, and sort of working my way up from there. So I spent about 10 years having full-time jobs as an editor at New York Magazine and at Harper's Bazaar, which is a monthly women's magazine. So writing and editing and being on staff the whole time. And during that time, I spoke to a mentor and family friend and told him that I was really interested in being a freelancer. And he said, well, what you really have to do is have your foot in the door enough so that in a meeting of editors, when someone is wondering who can write a story, someone will say, how about Charlotte Cowles? And so that was really a very sort of helpful thing, North Star, to kind of direct me towards. And it's an amorphous goal, but it was enough of a goal that when I eventually did start trying to transition to freelancing, I had enough connections. And it took me about a year, really, of freelancing on the side of my full-time job, in addition to a full-time job, which was not fun, and took many hours, and I lost a lot of sleep, and did not get to see my family or friends or loved ones as much as I would like to. But at the end of it, I really did have enough enough freelance work that I could quit my full-time job and pretty much go directly into full-time freelancing without having to scrabble around and look for assignments. I was able to make as much money as I had been in my full-time job. And another thing that I think a lot of freelancers don't necessarily think about, or people who are not freelancing yet may not worry about, but I also lucked out in that I am married and was able to go on my spouse's health insurance, which is a huge thing. So I think it's important to think about the logistics of things like that as well. So it was really a combination of 10 years of putting in the groundwork, a year of nose to the grindstone, sort of doing double time, and just the luck of my circumstances of being able to make it work. So that was how I did it.
It's a great story, because I think so many times we see the end result of something, right? So I see somebody who looks like an overnight success, and what I don't see is the 10 years of laying the groundwork. I don't see the 1 year of nose to the grindstone. I don't see any of that. And often many of us can get the wrong impression. Like, oh, I just have to write well, send it to 5 people, and there we go, right? And so that was one reason I wanted to have you on, because this is a real story. And what I hear in your voice is not a voice of caution or of to dissuade people. If you want to write, that's fine. It's just that be aware of what it takes. Is that more what you would say to someone who wants to go freelance?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I have had, that isn't to say that it's going to take every person like 15 years to be able to freelance. um, but I do have people reach out to me sometimes who are like, hey, how did you go freelance? Sort of like like they've just quit a job or they've just been laid off, which is a common thing in media, but especially for a lot of people in the past year. And it's like they want to know how to start from scratch, um, and that's definitely not to say it can't be done, but that's not how I did it, and I think it's difficult to do that.
Right. You remind me of, so one of my writing mentors um, is Joanne Greenberg, and she's the woman who years ago under a pen name wrote I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. She's this amazing author. And yesterday I told her I was going to have you on, and she said, ask her this. What are the main components that then make you successful as a writer? And she suggests that the first is having the hide of a rhinoceros because of the rejections and the struggle. And I'm hearing a little of that. I mean, you're incredibly resilient on this journey. So what would you, would you agree? And what would you add to that? Like, what are the characteristics we need if we want to be, let's just say, professional writers?
Yeah, I think that having a thick skin is definitely helpful. I don't naturally have a thick skin, but I do think that I learned pretty early on to not get frustrated by criticism.
Nice.
And if I got bad feedback from something, or if someone just never wrote me back, which is actually much more common, I think. If someone takes the time to give you negative feedback, that's actually like a huge compliment because it means they felt like responding to your email and took the time to do that. So that's one thing you should actually sort of take it as a compliment. But just that people are incredibly busy and and a lot of times you're just gonna get ignored, and you should not take it personally because that really does no one any favors. And so I think that's one thing, is to just really try to be resilient in that way, and kind of give people the benefit of the doubt. Like, most people are just overwhelmed all the time, especially people in journalism. They get literally hundreds of emails a day. So that's, I think, one component. I think another component is that, at least in journalism, I certainly can't speak for people who are fiction writers, or write in other mediums, but I think you have to just sort of like get to it. You can't be too precious about your writing sometimes.
Sure.
And deadlines are deadlines, and if you can't write something clean on time, or at least somewhat on time, I can't say I'm always on time either, for sure, but within a time frame that makes you dependable, then you're just not going to get hired. People want reliable, clean writing, and that's really important. And I think sometimes it's underestimated because it sounds sort of boring, but it's really important.
So I want to follow up with that in two directions. So one, I have to say your writing is not boring, and we're going to go there. But before we go there, I think you pointed out something that is so hard for many of us. I learned this in my academic writing. Be ready to cut stuff. Don't become enamored of your words. Fiction, nonfiction, academic, whatever it might be. And would you say that's one of the hardest things to do? I mean, writing well, on time, clean, but letting go, is that even harder?
Yeah, that's also really important, and that does bring up something that I should also mention, which is that your relationships to your editors are super important. And that's not to say you should just roll over and take every edit that is offered, because not every edit is you know, you should see it as a discussion if you disagree.
Yes.
But a lot of times editors are just really good readers. So if they're pointing something out, it's usually because their eye stopped there, and you don't want someone's eye to stop when they're reading something you wrote. You want them to just be fluid and to just be able to move quickly and easily through the piece in a way that doesn't lose their interest. So pay attention to your editors and respect them, and be grateful for their feedback. And it's totally fine to push them back sometimes if you really disagree with what they're saying, but be you know, that relationship is really important, and I think it should be treated with a lot of respect as well. And especially as someone who can be a little verbose in their writing, pretty much every recommendation for a cut I've ever gotten has been from a good place. Even if I ultimately think that some component of a cut section should be kept because it is really important. Usually it means that section is still really long-winded, and you need to shrink it down to a sentence or a phrase. And you should respect that and pay attention to it.
So in your process of being a successful freelance writer, you're always learning, and you're always improving your writing in a way that probably didn't happen in college, but that you have to stay open to. So it must be really challenging. I know I write a blog, right? And I have I just got edits back from an editor on my second novel. And even with the blog, which, right, I mean, my readership is tiny compared to yours. I wonder when I send it out, was that an F? Was that an A? So again, is that sort of thick hide, feel confident, but be ready? I mean, I think that's what so many freelancers don't realize, that's almost like the key component. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. And also, to your point, just always wanting to get better. Reading things by people that you admire, and trying to stay nimble in your voice, and trying new ways to improve your writing too, I think are all really important things. Some people read their writing out loud. Other people, you know, the more input you can get, really, the better. And even if it winds up seeming sort of off base, it's still always important to think about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a sense of courage you have to do what you do. I know your time frame is a little short today, so I'm going to keep talking, and then at some point we'll see if you can stay. I want to talk about your writing, some of your articles, and I'm trying to say this right. There are two things I noticed, and I read several of your articles, many of your articles. If we could talk about the ones, so you have the research ones, and you have the people ones. You have more than that, but let's talk about those two. So on the one hand, as a writer, you have to be an excellent researcher, which I saw in your articles on women in freelancing, retirement plans, things like that. You have to almost be, the ones that really intrigued me were the interviews, because you wrote as if you were writing about a friend you'd had a great conversation with, and yet you were honest with it. Does that make sense? Can we talk about the interview articles, because they fascinated me?
Absolutely, and those are really fun to write. I really enjoy interviewing people, and it does take a different skill set from writing, but not entirely. I think they're actually very related in that when you're interviewing somebody, you need to be willing to be surprised and sort of let them guide you a little bit, but also you're going to get a lot of information that isn't really relevant. So it's sort of it's sort of a line to walk between being surprised, allowing yourself to be surprised by what someone is telling you, while also being able to tease out a narrative and a story and a coherence in what they're saying. Most people don't really know. There are some people who are very practiced at telling a story about their lives, but most people are not, and most people don't necessarily make connections between different things that they're telling you, and you really have to tease that out and make it into a story that makes sense in a reader. Most conversations are really quite disjointed, and that's just how people communicate. And how dialogue works. But to be able to sort of shrink it down into a meaningful story that tells something that is relevant to a reader, that's really fun to me. And I've sometimes thought that, like, in another life it would be fun to be a speechwriter, because I actually really love being able to hear other people's stories and sort of distill them into a message. And people tell me this all the time when I'm interviewing them. They'll be like, "Can you make this make sense?" And I'm like, "I can. This is something that I know how to do." So to me, being able to edit an interview into something that is that makes sense, that's a real joy and a pleasure of mine.
So and then we'll go on to your research in a second. If we have time, you're going to have to high five me when you need to go. The interview you did with Betty White, one of the things that struck me was she was I mean, it just made her so real. She was saying she forgets to go to bed, but then her golden retriever will come up and almost say, like, "Are we going upstairs? Like, what are we doing?" And in that moment, I knew she was a true dog person, because the dog talks to her. And you captured in each of the interviews that I read something like that opened up a whole other element of the person for me. Is that part of that gift of telling somebody else's story that you're talking about?
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. And I loved speaking with Betty White. She is someone who, like, really takes very little editing, because she is so good at spinning a yarn and kind of giving an anecdote in a way that is really funny, and she knows her own punchlines. So she was just like a breeze to interview and really fun to talk to. But yeah, I think that a lot of people, and this is like a question that I'm always asking when I'm interviewing people, a lot of people don't know how to give really specific anecdotes. And really specific anecdotes, like the dog, are what, those are the touchstones of any good story. And so I'm constantly in interviews asking people to, like, give me a specific instance or give me a specific example. And it can sometimes be like pulling teeth. It can be really, really hard, because people love to kind of like speak in generalizations or, here's what I've learned. And it's just, that's not irrelevant information, but that's not what grabs the reader, and that's not what really sticks with people. What sticks with people is highly specific, granular, color and images and scenes that they, it's funny. These are not things that everybody can necessarily relate to in their own lives. Like, not most people don't have a golden retriever that tells them when to go to bed, but most people do have, they can picture that happening, and because they can picture it, they relate to it more. So there's this funny irony that the more specific and granular an example is, the more people can actually relate to it, even if their own life looks very different.
That's such a great point, that we think we have to be broad, but we lose the juiciness and the thing that really draws us in. I see you doing the same thing. Do you have a few more minutes to talk to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see you doing the same thing in your research articles. So your research so first off, I love the Whisper Network. I did love that. But the one that I can relate to, sort of a similar story, like you grabbed, was and I'm going to say women, but I don't know if it was just women, that their retirement plan is moving back in with their kids. And when you started that story, it was a little bit of a mind twist, like not at all what I expected, and that I had to read the article. It pulled me right in. So it seems that you're using that same skill in a research article and then digging deep. Am I getting that right? Is that also a part of what you do?
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty common mechanism in most reported stories, which is kind of to start with an interesting individual story at the beginning, so that a person's like, oh, I wonder what happens, and then you kind of draw them in, and then you show that it's part of a larger trend, right?
Right.
And to me, that it's a that's a relatively commonly used structure, and it's also what I find to be the most interesting. Like I'm usually not drawn to a topic because I hear, this big data point about how this thing is happening. I'm usually drawn to a story, to a trend or a larger movement, because I hear a really human story that is part of it, and I think that's a pretty common experience.
Yeah, there's a psychological element in there, that we relate to the one dog that gets hurt, right, or the one person, but somehow, I don't know, some huge number of displaced animals in a hurricane. While it's horrible, we can't relate to it. The numbers are too big. Show me one animal, and now I might be moved to do something and to act. And it's a sort of a human, just part of our human psychology. So, where was I going with that? So, okay, and you'll just let me know if I have time for like one more or two questions. The other interesting thing about your writing, and I don't know if this is part of the freelance life or just part of who you are, you're very diverse in what you write about. There's art, there's fashion, there's money, there's, human stories, on and on. And I'm wondering, is that part of a freelance life where an editor may say, I need someone to write, and you just nod your head? Or is that led by interest? Because you write well in many areas and many topics.
Well, thank you. I do think that it's funny. When I started out my career, my first job was on the arts desk of a newspaper. So I was writing about different aspects of arts and culture. And I think there's no right way to go about it. Some people start their careers on a very, very specific track, and they develop an expertise in a topic, and that becomes a really useful thing, because they are like the writer who really knows a certain beat and has a deep well of sources in that beat, right, and that becomes a huge strength for them. For me, I've never felt like there was only one thing that I wanted to write about, and I really enjoy, I think there's actually a psychological term for this. It's like fox versus hedgehog.
Yes.
And one animal digs and likes to be really deep in one place, and one animal, it's the fox, right, that digs, and the hedgehog that likes to run around and sort of dig all these little surface holes. And we have the animals flipped. But anyway, I've always been the one that preferred to run around and dig lots of little holes everywhere.
Right.
And I have always been interested in the psychological element of all different topics, and why humans find certain things important. So when I got into fashion writing, I found that really interesting, because there's such incredible characters in the fashion world. And we as humans are very visual creatures. And I live in New York City, Fashion Week, and the parties there were always really fun. But I also was like never a big fashion person. Like I was never like enamored of the fashion world the way that a lot of people who work in it are. You know, I like clothes just as much as the next person, but I was never someone who was like a tastemaker, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So in that sense, it was just a fun world to kind of ogle. And it was fun to talk to people in it because a lot of them were creative and a little wacky, but also brilliant. And so it was fun to sort of take a lens to it.
Right.
I have since developed really truly just because I was asked to write about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't necessarily an organic interest of mine, but it's something that that has become a real cornerstone of what I write about. But about money, particularly women in finance and career. And that is also really psychologically fascinating. The questions that people write in about are rarely about money. They're usually about how money has impacted their relationship or their career and what they should do in a certain situation. I get questions from readers, just to explain, with sort of money conundrums, and then I will reach out to different experts and put together a response
Nice.
based on that. So, so to answer your question, being able to write about lots of different things is really more out of my own interests. And I would like to write about even more things.
Right.
I get a lot of people, a lot of editors ask me if I can write more about money. I think just because there's fewer writers who have an expertise in that.
Right. Well, especially the way you write about it. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Because I write about it a lot already, and I want to, and it's not uninteresting to me at all. I find it fascinating, but I don't want that to be solely what I do.
Right. It's funny because so hedgehog fox. Another way to talk about that is Renaissance mind, right? I like to sort of delve in. There was an author years ago. I think her name was Barbara Scher, and she wrote about. That was her name, and she wrote about the scanner, the person who's the scanner, and can never quite find the one thing we're all supposed to find. And what's interesting with your career is your one thing is writing, but it's not one thing. It's interviews, and it's research, and it's different topics, and almost as if you reinvent yourself as you write. Right? You're a money advisor, you're a fashion person, and I think that's probably that gift you have of having a Renaissance mind. That hedgehog, which sounds a little better than hedgehog and fox, I think, only because we got to remember what animal does what, right? Right.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. So how is your time? Do I need to let you go?
I do need to go in a few minutes, but
Okay.
if you want a few more questions.
Okay. Yeah. Well, what? The stories are great. I mean, your story and all of this advice about being a freelancer. Some of us just want to write. Like I write. I second novel. I have no expectation that it's going to be a bestseller and be on the movie screen. I just wanted to write. I write a blog. I have no expectation that somebody's going to find my blog and say the next famous blog. I mean, like, I just want to write. Is that part of you too? Is that an important element in this?
That's so interesting, and I have so much respect and really jealousy for people who have that drive to write and create in that sense. And I don't know if it's because I write for my job, and so I don't see it as like a leisure time activity so much. If I wasn't writing, when I'm not writing, like say a week goes by and I'm deeply doing research, and I don't right, which is really rare. Usually I have enough sort of irons in the fire that it's a mix of reported writing. But when I don't, I do really miss it. So maybe if I took a long enough break, I would feel that urge to write. But I think because so much of what I write is based on what I'm seeing and kind of a reporterly element of it, that I don't really feel like I need it as a personal outlet. Does that make sense?
Yes. Right. And it would be hard to tease out because you're already doing it, so do I need it? I might only notice I need it if I stop.
Right, and I don't always, the way that I approach writing and also just the kind of writing that I do, I don't necessarily see it as a form of self-expression. And I know that I'm deeply embedded in all of the stories that I do, probably more so than I can possibly even see myself. But for the most part, I don't really see it as and any act of writing is creative. You have to make your own decisions about every word that you use. But I think that what I do is really probably very different from, well, certainly very different from fiction and different from memoir and different from a lot of the type of writing that I know that you do, and many people who are deeply creative and just feel that urge to write. I don't. To me, that's not necessarily what drives me. It's more that I get really excited about stories that I hear and I want to tell them.
Right.
So it's not quite so much about me. It's more about like seeing something and being like, that's really interesting. I want to find out more about it and tell that story.
So I have to say, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to ask you one more question. That's another form of fiction writing, right? You look at the world, and I'm an academic. I was an academic dean for 25 years. I have very boring published articles, right, that I've written. There's something, though, about seeing a story and telling it and making it come alive, which is what you do, which has an element of dressing the truth colorfully so that it's true, but the metaphor of it, the color of it comes to the surface. And that seems to me in your writing one of your gifts. Not just you're good at telling somebody else's story, but you're doing this blend of taking reality and making it a parable, right? Adding that mythos to it. So I don't. So that's just how I approach your writing. Let me ask you one more.
I understand. Yeah.
So do you want to say anything about that, or is that just?
No. I think that's just a really good point.
Okay. So last comment. What you are, the sort of notion of going back to igniting a renaissance of spirit, and what still inspires you?
That's a great question. I found, especially this past year, it's been really difficult to get inspired because you're just staring at the same four walls every day.
Right.
And I know I'm not alone in that. I find that I get most of my ideas just from talking to my friends, or something that I've made a real effort to do in the past year. Just trying to set up phone calls with people, even people I may not know that well, publicists, business owners, people in my community, just to kind of check in and see what they're doing. And to me, that has been where I get my ideas as well. And what is really difficult is that you don't, someone called it creative combustion, but this sort of and especially living in New York City, there are just like opportunities for this every day. Like you're on the subway and you see somebody reading something or talking about something, and you're like, whoa. And it allows you to think about an idea or a concept that you wouldn't otherwise be introduced to. I've gotten a lot of my ideas from just random conversations with people when they're like, oh yeah, this is going on in my life, this is something I'm dealing with. And you realize that it turns out to be a much bigger story. The article that you referenced about people who were retiring and didn't have enough money to do so and needed to move in with their kids. That came from just like catching up with a friend whose mom was moving in with him.
Wow.
Realized that it was a much bigger story than just him. So to me, just talking to people, that's where I get all of my ideas and all of my inspiration. And it's taken more effort to do that. And it's a little awkward, but not awkward, but it takes a lot more initiative to just be like, hey, want to catch up on the phone for 15 minutes today? But that's what I've mostly done this year, and I cannot wait for the ability to get back together with groups of people and have parties and chat with people, because that's, it's a much more fun way to get ideas, but we'll do that when we're able to.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Charlotte. And again, people can find you at charlottecowles.com. And on there are all the links, and I know I used more of your time than you said you had. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to let you go, and we will catch up after the show perhaps. And just
great.
But thank you so much for being here. Bye.
It's been a real pleasure. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, if you were listening to that was an amazing interview conversation with Charlotte Cowles, who you can find at charlottecowles.com. And you should know you're listening to the Dr. Elisa show. I've got about 10 minutes left here, and she actually gave me more time than I thought she would, which is amazing. But I want to follow up on so much of what she said. First off, she wrote a lot about side hustles, and I want you to know that some of the future guests I have coming on will be digging into that deeper and helping you discover how to perhaps do that. In June, I have Jeff Walker, who's the kind of king of Project Launch Formula. I have Victoria LeBaum coming on, who wrote, I don't have her book, Risk Forward, who also just did a launch. I've had Sherry Teigman, I've had Marianne Cantwell. But in 2 weeks, I have this amazing woman coming on, Sarah Hurwitz, and her book is called Here All Along, and it is rediscovering her spiritual path. She was the speechwriter for Michelle Obama, and she's going to be on in 2 weeks' time, so I want you to join me there. So that's sort of this side hustle piece, right, and then what's coming up in the future. But I want to just build a little bit on this notion of being a freelance writer. And you heard two pieces. Freelance as in making a living, writing because I write. I'm that person. I'm probably never going to make, I'm never going to make a living as a writer, but I write. And I'd actually love it, for those of you who have found my website, I'd love it if you kept making comments on my blogs, because I appreciate it. So you can find me at elisarobin.com. But I find that writing the blogs, that the second novel that I just got back from the editor, so it's going to take a while for Dark Fire to actually hit the press, fills something inside me. And my mentor, Joanne Greenberg, who I also will have on at some point this summer, said to me that we need, as you heard, the hide of a rhino if we're going to write. That's just what we need. And you heard Charlotte talk about it. You don't hear back. Well, people are busy. If somebody gives you rough feedback, take that as a compliment. At least they felt like giving you some feedback. we have to also have the vision that we have something worth saying, something that somebody else might want to hear. Though Joanne said to me that sometimes she does not know how she feels until she writes. And I find that true within my blogs. That the blogs sometimes come out of me. My most recent one definitely does. It's titled Ghost Ships, and you can find it on my website and on Facebook and on Twitter and on LinkedIn. And I find that I think I'm going to write one thing and something else comes out, and I realize something about my life in that moment. If you're an astrologer, it's because probably I have Saturn in the 12th in Scorpio, and our 12th house is what we don't have conscious access to. Lots of explanations, but it's another reason that some of us write. There's a craving. And I like to think I'm halfway good at it. Though also you heard Charlotte say, there's always a way to improve. We can always get better. And so I just got the second novel back from the editor. I was terrified. Did I flunk? Did I get an A? Would a C+ be good? Right? I'm an academic. I want to know. And it was wonderful to hear someone say, the story's great. The characters are great. Try using contractions. Never occurred to me that when I write. And of course I was an academic. It's trained out of us that I did not use one contraction in that entire book, I think. Things like that help us grow. And so I encourage you to do that, to find people to help you with that. And not just in writing, but also in a side hustle. Why? Because we have an idea and we're afraid, perhaps. Should I do it? We have to have the people that help us risk forward, like Victoria Laban talks about. But we'll see the beige people, like Marion Cantwell talked about, who hold us back. We have to have the courage, and she talked about that too, Charlotte talked about that, the courage to do the thing, to perhaps listen to the people who are discouraging us, recognizing that they may be offering us caution, but remembering that ships will not sink if they are at port, but ships were not made to stay at port. Great ships were meant to sail wild seas, to meet wild and crazy and capricious winds. That's what ships were made for. And for many of us, that's what we were built for. We were built for that wild adventure. And yes, at times, to stay in shore, to stay in harbor, repair the ship, make sure that the sheets and the sails, everything's working. But that you can take your ship out. You may hit a storm. That's okay. That ship may sink. That's okay. There are those of us who help each other come back to shore. I have to tell you, I was listening to somebody talk about how women don't support women in business. And I have not had that experience. I have had women bosses and male bosses who've been wonderful and horrible, equally. I've had women friends who've supported me through anything, women colleagues who've supported me through anything. Men, I'm sure you've had similar experiences. We get this mythos that others will not help us. Where do I want to tag that back to? This show. That's my goal, is to help you, to ignite a renaissance of spirit within you, to help you build the courage to go forth, to listen to your soul's craving, and to build the life you want, be it financial or in love or spiritually, or just an amazing life adventure where you wake up every day knowing you're blessed to still be alive. And perhaps those of us who've almost died were given that gift. Wow, I woke up this morning and I knew I was loved. I'm not going to share how, but I knew I was loved when I woke up this morning. And I knew that today would be an amazing day. So, from me here and everybody at KUHS Denver The Stream, and definitely from the Dr. Elisa Show, and from my heart, thank you for joining me. Thank you for tuning in. What I wish for you this week is to stay well, stay ignited, and stay inspired. And until I see you in 2 weeks, I wish you peace.